Hello, Nick Park here from Evangelical Alliance Ireland, and welcome to our first 2025 episode of It Might Be Friday But Sunday's Coming, our weekly message from Evangelical Alliance Ireland. Now, we've just passed New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and I hope you had as much as a great time and a fellowship time as I did in the churches where I attended over the new year. However, it may be that some of us missed something quite important that happened on the legislative front, and it is something that's important that we as Christians understand it and understand it well. The new hate crime legislation came into force on New Year's Eve, 31st of December. Now, its official name is the Criminal Justice Hate Offences Act of 2024. Now, this did not include the proposed hate speech legislation that many people have been very concerned about. We'll say a little bit more about that later on. But the Hate Offences Act is now law here in Ireland. And as reported by RTE, I'll quote you exactly what it said. It says the Criminal Justice Hate Offences Act 2024 was created to protect people targeted because of their race, colour, sexual orientation, gender and disability. Which is immediately where I have to say, hey, RTE, you missed a bit. Because actually it covers more than that. It doesn't just protect people because of their race, colour, sexual orientation, gender and disability. It also protects people if they are encountering hatred because of their national or ethnic origin. So for example, if you committed a crime against somebody and you did it because they were Italian and you hate Italian people, that might not be a racial thing, because it's not about somebody's colour or anything else, but if it's because they're Italian, that would also come under this legislation. But much more importantly for us, religion, being part of a religious group, is also one of the protected groups under this new Hate Offences Act. So what does that mean for us as evangelical Christians? Well, basically, this new legislation has not created any new offences, but it has increased the sentences that can be applied for existing crimes where it can now be proved that hatred under one of these grounds is a factor. So, in other words, this new legislation should not hurt us at all as Christians, because we aren't criminals. And so if you're not committing something that is already a crime, then this legislation, it won't make any difference to you whatsoever, because if you're not committing a crime, then you can't be accused of committing a crime on the grounds of hate. This is only something that applies to people who are already criminals. And it's saying that if somebody commits a criminal offence and hatred against a group of people is a factor in why they committed that offence, and that can be demonstrated and proved, then they're going to get longer prison sentences. And so that while this won't hurt us as Christians at all, it may well apply in other people getting longer prison sentences if they commit crimes against us as Christians purely because they hate us as Christians. So I give you an example. If somebody assaults you, let's say somebody punches you in the face in the street, that's already a criminal offence. But if somebody punches you in the face in the street because you are standing there preaching the gospel, and it can be proved by the words they said at the time that that was the reason why they hit you, then the prison sentence that they can receive can now become greater, because they have not only assaulted you, they've also committed a hate crime when they assaulted you. Or if somebody steals from you because you are a Christian. If somebody breaks into a church building and steals the PA system, for example, if it can be shown that the reason they did that, if for example they say on social media, I did this because I hate Pentecostal Christians, or I hate these born-again evangelicals, then again, that becomes a hate crime and the sentence becomes greater. Or if somebody commits criminal damage against a church, for example, I was about to say if they burn a church down, but actually this can't increase the prison sentence, because actually under Irish law, the maximum sentence for arson is already life imprisonment, so you can't increase it any longer than a life sentence. But if somebody committed vandalism, if somebody, for example, drew or got a can of spray paint and sprayed it, I hate these Christians, on the wall of your building, they already would have been committing a crime of vandalism before this new legislation came into force on New Year's Eve. But now it's a hate crime, and so the penalty they may expect to receive is going to be greater. Now, so that's so much for what the new legislation that has come in. Now, what about the hate speech stuff? As I've already said, the proposed hate speech legislation, in the end, the last government ditched that and didn't try to implement it. Now, I will say, and I've said all along, I was not particularly concerned about the proposed hate speech legislation. I honestly believe that if we behaved as Christians, we should not have had much reason for concern about that at all. However, I wasn't a fan of the legislation, so I'm quite happy that it's been ditched, but nevertheless, that doesn't mean that you are therefore free to just speak hatefully and stir up hatred about other people, because we already have a hate speech law on the books here in Ireland, and we have done so, in fact, for the last 35 years. And that's the Prohibition of Incitement to Hatred Act of 1989, and that is still part of the law here in Ireland. So the existing Hate Speech Act, it says that it is an offence to communicate threatening, abusive or insulting material that is intended or likely to stir up hatred against a group of people because of their race, their colour, their nationality, their religion, their ethnic or national origins, their membership because they're part of the travelling community, or because of their sexual orientation. And this communication that can cause you to be prosecuted under this act, it can be spoken, or it can be something you put into writing or post on the internet, for example, or you broadcast it, or you make it part of a recording. Now, there are defences against this legislation. If you can show that you did not intend to stir up hatred, then you can defend yourself against this charge by proving that you didn't know the content of the material or you had no reason to suspect that the material was threatening, abusive or insulting. And it does not apply to anything that you say in a private residence unless it is heard or seen by others outside. So if you're sat at a dinner table with somebody and you say something that somebody might deem to be hateful or nasty, if it's in the privacy of your own home and you've a reasonable expectation that nobody outside can hear it, then that cannot be prosecuted under the existing legislation. Now, what if somebody secretly records you? Well, actually, you're still protected. You still are not guilty because you had a reasonable expectation and you didn't know that it could be heard or seen by others outside. However, it doesn't apply, for example, if you record a video in your private home and then put that out there on the internet, because any moron should be able to understand that that is going to be seen, even if it's filmed in your home, people are going to see it outside of your home. So that's the existing hate speech legislation, that we should not speak or write in a way that stirs up hatred against a group of people. Now, we can criticize people. We can express our disagreement with people. We can express our disagreement with people's moral behaviour. We can express our disagreement with other people's religious views and those of religions that we deem to be false religions, just as they can criticise us and criticise what we believe. That's perfectly okay. That's perfectly legal for you to do that. But if you are trying to stir up hatred against other people, then that is an offence. Already is an offence under law, irrespective of the new legislation that didn't come in the end. Now, I would say this as well, that here at Evangelical Alliance Ireland, we are aware that sometimes people will be falsely accused because they make a simple theological statement. Somebody will say, oh, that's hatred. And we will do everything we can to support where Christians are falsely accused, and thank God usually the courts do see sense, and either the case against them does not succeed or it's overturned on appeal. A number of years back, now this was the law actually in Northern Ireland rather than the Republic of Ireland, I spent an entire week sitting in court beside Pastor James McConnell of Belfast when he was wrongly accused of hate speech under the British version of this law, and I attended as an expert witness in his trial and sat with him, as I say, for the whole week, because we felt this was something really important that was worth standing up for, that Christians, for example, do have the right to criticise the Islamic faith and to express our disagreement with what sometimes Muslims do and say, and that is not stirring up hatred. That is legitimate theological debate. Now, I would say this: if you fall foul of the existing hate speech legislation or the new Hate Offences Act, then actually breaking the law and being punished for breaking the law is the least of your problems. Because as Christians, I can't imagine any circumstance where a Christian should be able to be prosecuted under these acts if they're behaving as a Christian should behave. And if that's the case, we have a much greater problem than the legal problem, and that is what God thinks about what we're doing. You see, we are not called to be insipid. We are not called to be always compromising. We are not called to pretend that sin is not sin. We are here to declare righteousness, to declare the love of God, and also to point out sin as well. That's perfectly okay for us to do that and to express what we believe about sin, righteousness, and judgment. However, if we do that in a way that is genuinely perceived to be hateful, then we're probably not doing a very good job of it. We need to hate the sin, but love the sinner with all our heart. And I'm convinced that if we as Christians prayed more and listened to God more, but we would find that we could speak out on even the most controversial issues without being accused of hate speech by anyone that's behaving in any way, or anyone that's being reasonable in any shape or form. So hopefully that gives you a greater understanding of the new legislation, the Criminal Justice Hate Offences Act, which takes existing crimes and makes the sentences bigger sentences if hate is a component to something that is already a crime. And of course the existing hate speech law, the Prohibition of Incitement to Hatred Act of 1989, which says that we should not stir up hatred against any group of people or anyone, whether it's a group of people or an individual. But sure, we know that anyway, because that's part of what Jesus Christ himself tells us in his word. So look, hopefully this helps you understand a bit better, and if you do have any questions about this, feel free to contact me at nick@evangelical.ie, and we can gladly go into this a little bit more and in greater depth than we can do in this kind of format. So look, God bless you, have an incredible week, and join us again next Friday for the next edition of It Might Be Friday, but Sunday's Coming.